A single mother, working the night shift, made one decision that cost her everything. 18 years later, a helicopter landed in her front yard, and the two people who stepped out were the last people she ever expected to see again. This is that story. Maya Johnson wiped down the counter at Rosie's diner for the third time that hour, her lower back screaming from a double shift that had started 14 hours ago. It was 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, November 28, 2005, and Atlanta's West End was quiet except for the occasional car passing on Metropolitan Parkway. At 42 years old, Maya had worked at Rosie's for 6 years, long enough to know every crack in the vinyl booths, every temperamental burner on the industrial stove, every trick to coax life out of the ancient coffee maker. Long enough to perfect the smile she wore for customers even when her feet were bleeding inside her worn-out Walmart sneakers. Long enough to know that her boss, Richard Caldwell, was watching her from his office with the kind of attention that made her skin crawl. Richard had owned Rosie's for 3 years, having bought it from the original Rosie when she retired to Florida. Where Rosie had been warm and motherly, Richard was cold and calculating. He'd cut staff, reduced portions, watered down the coffee, and implemented a policy that Maya hated: absolutely no free food, no matter the circumstances. "Every plate that leaves this kitchen gets paid for," he'd announced at his first staff meeting. "I don't care if it's Christmas Day and someone's starving. This is a business, not a charity." Maya had bitten her tongue then. She needed this job. Her daughter Tamika was 15, smart as a whip, with dreams of becoming a doctor. Maya's son Marcus was 12, all energy and questions, already taller than her. They lived in a 2-bedroom apartment in southwest Atlanta that cost more than Maya could afford, but it was in a neighborhood with decent schools, and that mattered more than anything. Everything Maya did, every double shift, every smile for rude customers, every night her back ached so badly she could barely stand, was for Tamika and Marcus. The bell above the diner's door chimed. Maya looked up and felt her heart contract. 2 children stood in the doorway, a girl maybe 10 years old, and a boy who couldn't have been more than 7. Both white, both painfully thin, wearing clothes that were too light for November and too dirty to have been washed recently. The girl had strawberry blonde hair pulled into a messy ponytail, freckles across her nose, and pale blue eyes that held too much knowledge for a 10-year-old. The boy had sandy brown hair that stuck up in all directions, the same blue eyes as his sister, and a face so gaunt that Maya could see the shape of his skull beneath the skin. The girl held the boy's hand protectively, her eyes scanning the diner with the wariness of someone much older than 10. "We're closed," Maya called out gently, even though the open sign still glowed in the window. She glanced toward Richard's office. The door was shut, which meant he was probably reviewing receipts, his nightly ritual. "Please," the girl said. Her voice was small but steady. "My brother's hungry. We can wash dishes or clean or something. We just need food." Maya's professional smile faded. These weren't just hungry kids. These were kids in trouble. She moved around the counter, approaching them slowly like they were wounded animals that might bolt. Up close, she could see the bruises on the boy's arms, the way the girl positioned herself between Maya and her brother, the hollowness in both their faces that spoke of days, maybe weeks, without enough food. "What are your names?" Maya asked softly, kneeling down to their eye level. The girl hesitated, calculating whether honesty was safe. "Finally, I'm Emma. This is my brother, Daniel." "Where are your parents, sweethearts?" "Dead." Emma's voice didn't waver, but Maya saw her hand tighten around Daniel's. "Car accident last year. We're supposed to be with our aunt, but she—" Emma stopped, looked at the floor. "We're okay. We just need some food. Please." Daniel looked up at Maya with eyes that were too old for 7, too knowing. "I haven't eaten since yesterday." Something broke open in Maya's chest. She thought of Marcus at 12, always hungry, always eating everything in sight. She thought of Tamika, who'd never known real hunger, who'd never had to beg strangers for food. These babies shouldn't be begging anyone for anything. "Come on," Maya said, making a decision that would alter the course of all their lives. "Sit down. Let me get you something to eat." If stories about small acts of kindness changing lives move you, stay with us. This one's going to take you somewhere unexpected. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Maya seated Emma and Daniel in the back booth, the one furthest from Richard's office. She returned to the kitchen and worked quickly. 2 hamburgers cooked medium with extra cheese, a full basket of fries, a grilled cheese sandwich for good measure, chocolate milk for both. Food that kids would actually eat. Food with enough calories to help. Her hands shook slightly as she plated everything. She was breaking Richard's cardinal rule. But she'd deal with that later. Right now, these children needed food. She brought everything out and set it in front of them. Daniel's eyes went wide, the kind of wide that comes from genuine shock, and he reached for the burger with both trembling hands before Emma could stop him. "Slow down, baby," Maya said gently, sliding into the booth across from them. "It's okay. Take your time. Nobody's taking it away." But Daniel couldn't slow down. He ate like someone who'd learned that food was never guaranteed, that you grabbed what you could when you could. Ketchup smeared across his face. His small hands could barely hold the burger. He was 7 years old and eating like he might not see food again for days, because he probably wouldn't. Emma ate more carefully, trying to maintain some dignity, but Maya could see the same desperation underneath the control. She cut her burger into precise quarters, eating each piece methodically, making it last. Maya sat quietly, giving them space, her mind racing. These children weren't just hungry. They were in danger. She'd worked in these neighborhoods long enough to recognize the signs, the flinching when someone moved too fast, the way Emma constantly monitored the door, the bruises Daniel tried to hide. "Emma, honey," Maya said softly after they'd eaten half their food. "Where's your aunt? Does she know where you are?" Emma's jaw tightened. She set down her burger carefully. "She doesn't care where we are." "What do you mean?" "She just wanted the money from the state, for fostering us." "But she doesn't want us." Emma's voice was matter-of-fact, like she was stating the weather. "She has a boyfriend. Roger. He doesn't like kids. Especially not us." The way Emma said "especially not us" made Maya's blood run cold. She'd heard that tone before, from women at her church who'd escaped abusive marriages, from teenagers who'd aged out of foster care with stories that made you want to burn the whole system down. "Has he hurt you?" Maya asked, though she already knew the answer. Emma didn't respond, but Daniel pulled his sleeve down over the bruises on his arm. The motion was automatic, practiced. He'd been taught to hide the evidence. Sweethearts, you need to tell someone. A teacher, a social worker. We tried. Emma's pale blue eyes met Maya's, and Maya saw something there that made her want to cry. The look of a child who'd learned that adults don't always help, that sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you are the ones who hurt you most. "Our caseworker said our aunt's house passed inspection, said we should be grateful we're not in a group home. But she didn't see." Emma stopped, her composure cracking just slightly. "She didn't stay long enough to see. Nobody believes us." Maya reached across the table and took Emma's small, cold hand in hers. "I believe you." Emma's composure cracked, just for a second. Her eyes filled with tears that she blinked away furiously, like crying was a luxury she couldn't afford. "We just need to survive until I'm 18. Then I can get custody of Danny. Then I can take care of him. I just need 8 more years. 8 years. This child was planning her survival in 8-year increments. This 10-year-old girl had already mapped out the next 8 years of endurance, of survival, of protecting her younger brother from people who were supposed to protect them. "Where are you staying tonight?" Maya asked, her voice thick with emotion she was trying to control. "We'll find somewhere. We always do." Emma's voice was steady again, the mask back in place. "There's an abandoned building on Sylvan Road. It's not too cold if you find the right spot. An abandoned building. 2 children. November in Atlanta." Maya opened her mouth to say, "What?" That they could come home with her? That she'd call someone who could actually help? That everything would be okay? But before she could speak, the bell above the door chimed again. Maya's stomach dropped. A police cruiser had pulled up outside, its lights off but unmistakable in the streetlight. Through the window, Maya could see an officer talking on his radio, looking directly at the diner. Emma saw it too. The color drained from her face. She grabbed Daniel's hand. "We have to go." "Wait. If the police find us out past curfew, they'll take us back to Aunt Linda's. Please, we have to go now." But it was too late. The officer was already at the door, his hand on the handle. And behind Maya, Richard Caldwell's office door opened with a click that sounded like a gunshot in the quiet diner. "What the hell is going on out here?" Richard Caldwell was 53 years old, balding, with a gut that strained against his polo shirts, and a permanent scowl etched into his fleshy face. He'd made his money in real estate, buying properties in black neighborhoods, letting them deteriorate, then selling them at a loss for tax write-offs while pocketing insurance money along the way. Rosie's Diner was just another investment to him, another line item on a spreadsheet, another source of cash flow that he squeezed for every penny. He looked at the children, took in their thin frames, their dirty clothes, their obvious poverty, with a kind of disgust that made Maya's skin crawl. Then his eyes moved to the plates of food, mostly eaten, then to Maya standing protectively between the children and everything else. His face went red. "Did you give them that food?" Maya lifted her chin, her heart hammering. They were hungry. Did they pay for it? Richard, their children, did they pay for it? Each word was enunciated slowly, deliberately, like Maya was too stupid to understand English. The police officer entered, his hand resting on his belt in that casual way cops have that's meant to be reassuring but never is. He was white, middle-aged, with a thick neck and the tired eyes of someone who'd seen too much and stopped caring somewhere along the way. His name tag read Officer Morrison. "Evening," Morrison said, his eyes sweeping the diner and landing on Emma and Daniel. "We got a call about 2 juveniles matching these kids' description. Runaway report from their legal guardian." He pulled out a small notepad. "Emma and Daniel Hartley. That you too?" Emma said nothing. Daniel pressed closer to his sister. "These are them," Richard said immediately, pointing at Emma and Daniel like they were evidence at a crime scene. "They came in here begging. My employee gave them food without authorization. I want it noted that I'm not responsible for anything that happens. I run a legitimate business. I don't harbor runaways." "Nobody's accusing you of anything, sir," Morrison said wearily, like he'd had this exact conversation 1,000 times before. He looked at Emma and Daniel, who'd pressed themselves into the corner of the booth like cornered animals. "Kids, I need you to come with me. Your Aunt Linda filed a missing persons report. She's worried about you." "She's not worried," Emma said quietly, but with absolute certainty. "She just doesn't want to lose the check." Morrison's expression flickered. Just for a second, Maya saw that he understood, that he'd seen this story play out before, that he knew exactly what these kids were going home to. but he shook his head, his face hardening back into professional neutrality. "That's not for me to decide, sweetheart. Come on now. Let's not make this difficult." Daniel started crying, quiet tears that he tried to hide behind his hands. His small shoulders shook. Emma put her arm around him, her face a mask of protective fury and helplessness. "Please," Maya said to the officer, stepping forward. "Can't you see they're scared? Can't you investigate why they ran away? Look at them." "Ma'am, unless there's proof of abuse, my hands are tied. They've got to go back to their legal guardian. That's the law. Look at the bruises on his arms." Maya's voice rose, desperation bleeding through. "Look at how thin they are. These children are being neglected at minimum, and you're just going to take them back." Morrison's jaw tightened. "Ma'am, those bruises could be from anything. Kids fall, kids play rough. Without a documented pattern or a direct allegation. This is a documented pattern. They ran away. They're begging strangers for food. Ma'am, you need to step back. You're interfering with official business." Richard grabbed Maya's arm, his fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. "You heard the officer. This is none of your concern." Maya jerked away from Richard, her heart breaking as she watched Morrison guide Emma and Daniel toward the door. Emma looked back at Maya once, and in that look Maya saw everything. "Thank you. I'm sorry. Goodbye. Please remember us." And then they were gone. The door closed. Through the window, Maya watched Morrison open the back door of his cruiser, not the cage in back for criminals at least, but the regular back seat. He helped Daniel in, then Emma. Emma's face was visible through the window for just a moment, pale and resigned, before the car pulled away into the November night. Maya stood in the empty diner, shaking, her hands clenched into fists. "My office. Now." Richard's voice was ice. Richard's office was small, cluttered with ledgers and invoices and the detritus of a man who counted every penny twice. Receipts were pinned to a corkboard like trophies. A calculator sat on his desk next to a ledger where he tracked expenses in tiny, cramped handwriting. The room smelled like stale coffee and something sour that Maya couldn't identify. He sat behind his desk and gestured to the chair across from him. Maya remained standing. "You're fired," Richard said. Just like that. No preamble. No hesitation. You violated company policy. You gave away food without payment or authorization. That's theft. They were children. I don't care if they were the Pope and the President. The policy is clear. No exceptions. Richard leaned back in his chair, his hands folded across his gut, enjoying this. You stole from me, Maya. I could press charges. Have you arrested? Maya's mind reeled. Arrested? A criminal record. She'd never get another job. Never be able to help Tamika and Marcus. Please, Maya said, and she hated how desperate her voice sounded. Please, Richard. I'll pay for the food. I'll work extra shifts. Just don't fire me. I have 2 kids depending on me. Should have thought of that before you decided to play Mother Teresa on my dime. Richard opened his desk drawer and pulled out a final paycheck. He'd already prepared it, Maya realized with horror. He'd been waiting for an excuse to fire her. You're done. Effective immediately. Turn in your apron and get out. Richard, I said get out. Or I call the police and have you removed for trespassing. Maya's hands shook as she untied her apron. 6 years. 6 years of double shifts and aching feet and swallowing her pride every time Richard made some racist comment disguised as a joke. 6 years of building toward something, maybe not much, but something. Stability, regular paychecks, health insurance, gone. She laid the apron on his desk and walked out without another word. What was there to say? Richard Caldwell wasn't interested in mercy or understanding or basic human decency. He was interested in control and profit, and Maya had threatened both. The night air hit her face like a slap. It was colder than when she'd started her shift 14 hours ago. Maya stood in the parking lot, her work clothes smelling like grease and coffee, and tried to figure out what to do next. She had $347 in her checking account. Rent was due in 12 days, $950. The electric bill was overdue. Tamika needed new shoes. Marcus's school was collecting money for a field trip he'd been excited about for weeks, and Maya had just been fired for feeding 2 starving children. She pulled out her phone, an old flip phone that barely worked, and called her sister, Denise. Denise answered on the 4th ring, groggy. "Maya, it's midnight. What's wrong?" "I got fired." Silence. "Then what happened?" Maya told her. About Emma and Daniel, about the food, about Richard and the police officer, and how those 2 babies were driven back to a house where they were being hurt. When she finished, Denise was quiet for a long moment. "You did the right thing," Denise said finally. "I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but you did the right thing, Maya. The right thing doesn't pay rent. I can lend you some money. Not much, but no." Denise was a single mother too, working as a nurse's aide, barely making it herself. "I'll figure something out. I always do." But as Maya sat in her car in the empty parking lot of Rosie's diner, watching the open sign flicker and die, she wasn't sure that was true anymore. Sometimes doing the right thing cost more than you could afford to pay, and Maya had just paid everything. Maya didn't tell Tamika and Marcus about losing her job. Not right away. She left the apartment the next morning at her usual time, dressed in her usual clothes, and spent 8 hours sitting in the public library on Auburn Avenue, filling out job applications on the ancient computers. She applied to every restaurant, every retail store, every cleaning service within bus distance of their apartment. By the end of the first week, she'd applied to 43 jobs. She'd gotten 2 interviews. Both had gone well until they called her references, and both had called Rosie's diner, and Richard Caldwell had made sure they knew exactly why Maya Johnson was no longer employed at his establishment. Theft, he'd told them. Maya knew because the second interviewer, a kind woman at a coffee shop in Midtown, had been honest enough to tell her. "Mr. Caldwell said you stole food and gave it away, that you were unreliable, that he wouldn't recommend you for any position involving money or merchandise." Maya had thanked the woman and left before the tears could come. By the second week, the electricity was shut off. Maya told the kids it was just a problem with the breaker, that she'd get it fixed soon. They ate dinner by candlelight and pretended it was an adventure. Marcus thought it was cool. Tamika looked at Maya with eyes that saw too much and said nothing. By the third week, Maya had burned through her savings and maxed out the one credit card she had. She'd borrowed $200 from Denise despite her sister's own desperate situation. She'd sold her television, her microwave, everything of value that wouldn't be immediately missed. By the 4th week, she had to tell them. "We're going to move," Maya said at dinner, rice and beans again, the 3rd night in a row. "Just for a little while, just until I find a new job." "Move where?" Marcus asked around a mouthful of rice. "A homeless shelter?" Tamika's voice was sharp. "Mama, no. Baby, it's temporary. You promised—" Tamika stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. "You promised we'd never have to go back to that. You promised." Maya's throat tightened. 5 years ago, after Tamika and Marcus's father had left, Maya had lost her apartment and they'd spent 3 months in a shelter. 3 months of sharing a room with 6 other families, of Tamika being bullied at school when kids found out where she lived, of Marcus having nightmares about strange men walking past their beds at night. Maya had promised it would never happen again. I'm doing everything I can, baby. I'm applying everywhere. It's just nobody's hiring right now, and I need more time. You got fired, didn't you? Tamika's eyes were bright with tears she refused to let fall. That's why we're broke. That's why the lights got shut off. You got fired. Maya couldn't lie to her. Yes, why? I gave food to some kids who needed it. My boss didn't approve. So you chose some random kids over us? Tamika's voice cracked. Over your own family? The words hit Maya like a physical blow. Tamika, I have a chemistry test tomorrow. How am I supposed to study with no lights? How am I supposed to become a doctor when we're living in a homeless shelter? How? Tamika's voice broke completely. She turned and ran to the bedroom she shared with Marcus, slamming the door. Marcus looked at Maya with wide eyes. Are we really going to be homeless, Mama? Maya pulled him into her arms. This boy who was growing too fast, who was all knees and elbows and questions she didn't have answers for. No, baby, I'm going to figure this out, I promise. But even as she said it, Maya wasn't sure she believed it anymore. Family Promise was exactly as Maya remembered. A converted church building with temporary partitions creating rooms for families. Clean, yes. Safe, yes. But still a place where privacy was a luxury and dignity was something you fought for every single day. They got a space in the back corner, 2 sets of bunk beds, a small area for their belongings, a curtain that didn't quite reach the floor for privacy. Tamika took the top bunk and turned her face to the wall. Marcus tried to be brave, but Maya heard him crying softly that first night. Maya lay in her own bunk and stared at the ceiling and wondered how everything had fallen apart so quickly. One act of kindness. That's all it had been. Feeding 2 hungry children, and it had cost her everything. The shelter had rules. Residents had to be out by 7 a.m. and couldn't return until 5 p.m. Everyone had to attend job training workshops. Everyone had to meet with a case manager weekly to prove they were working towards self-sufficiency. Maya's case manager was a white woman in her 30s named Kelly, who meant well but had no concept of what it actually meant to be poor in Atlanta in 2005. Have you considered going back to school? Kelly asked at their first meeting, looking at Maya's intake form. With a degree, you'd have much better job prospects. I have 2 kids to feed, Maya said, keeping her voice even. I can't afford school. I need a job now. What about your children's father? Is he providing support? He's been gone for 5 years. I don't know where he is, Kelly made a note. And you were fired from your last position for theft? The word felt like a knife. I fed 2 hungry children. That's not theft. I'm just telling you how employers will see it. Kelly's voice was gentle but firm. You're going to have to address this in interviews. Maybe consider positions that don't require references. Like what? Day labor, cleaning services that hire on the spot, maybe factory work? Maya had already tried all of those, but she nodded and pretended Kelly was being helpful because you didn't challenge your case manager when your family's shelter bed depended on their approval. Maya found work finally not steady work, but something. A staffing agency that sent her to different businesses for day shifts, 1 day at a warehouse, 2 days at a factory. A week cleaning office buildings at night. The pay was minimum wage, 15 cents an hour, and there were no benefits, no guaranteed hours, no stability, but it was something. She worked whenever they called, took every shift they offered, even the ones that meant leaving Tamika to watch Marcus, even the ones that meant she got 4 hours of sleep before having to be out of the shelter by 7 a.m. Her body began to break down. Her back, already bad from years of waitressing, got worse. She developed a cough that wouldn't go away. Lost 15 pounds she couldn't afford to lose. But she kept going because what choice did she have? 3 months into their shelter stay, Tamika came to Maya with a form from school. "It's for the advanced placement track," Tamika said quietly. "If I get in, I can take college-level classes. It'll help with scholarships." Maya looked at the form. There was a fee, $150 for the testing and materials. $150 might as well have been $1 million. "Baby, I don't know if—" "It's okay." Tamika's voice was flat, emotionless. "I knew you couldn't afford it. I just thought I'd ask." She walked away before Maya could see her cry. That night, Maya made a decision. She went to a check cashing place that offered payday loans, the kind with interest rates that should be illegal, and borrowed $200. She paid the $150 fee for Tamika's AP program and used the rest for groceries. She'd figure out how to pay it back later. She had to figure out everything later because there was no time to think about the future when the present was crushing her. 4 months into the shelter stay, Marcus got into a fight at school. Another kid had called him shelter boy, and Marcus had punched him in the face. Maya had to take time off work time. She couldn't afford to meet with the principal. Marcus was suspended for 3 days. The other boy, whose father was a lawyer, got detention. "Your son has been struggling," the principal said, a thin white man with a patronizing smile. "His grades have dropped significantly. He's falling asleep in class. We're concerned about his home situation." "We're in a shelter temporarily," Maya said, forcing herself to stay calm. "It's been difficult, but we're managing. Mrs. Johnson, we have resources available, social services that could—" "I don't need social services. I need a job that pays a living wage. I need employers who don't blacklist people for feeding hungry children. I need a system that doesn't punish poverty." The principal blinked, taken aback. "I understand you're frustrated. Do you? Do you understand what it's like to work 3 jobs and still not have enough? To watch your kids go to bed hungry? To lose everything because you tried to help someone?" Maya stood up. She'd said too much. Given them ammunition they could use to question her fitness as a parent. "Thank you for your time," she said, her voice cold. "Marcus will serve his suspension. It won't happen again." She left before the principal could respond. 6 months into the shelter stay, on a Tuesday in May 2006, Maya was working a night shift cleaning offices in Buckhead when she collapsed. One moment she was emptying a trash can. The next she was on the floor, her vision swimming, pain radiating through her chest. A security guard found her and called 911. At the hospital, they told her she'd had a panic attack brought on by exhaustion, malnutrition, and chronic stress. They gave her a prescription for anxiety medication she couldn't afford and told her to rest. Rest. As if that was an option. Denise picked her up from the hospital at 3 a.m. Maya hadn't wanted to call her sister, but the hospital needed someone to list as an emergency contact. "You can't keep doing this," Denise said as they drove through empty Atlanta streets. "You're going to kill yourself. What choice do I have? Let me help. Move in with me. It'll be tight, but you live in a 1-bedroom apartment with your 2 kids. There's no room. We'll make room." Maya shook her head. "I can't keep taking from you. You've already given me so much. You're my sister, and you have your own family to take care of." Maya stared out the window at the city passing by. All those buildings full of people sleeping in beds they owned, in homes they could count on. "I'll figure this out," I always do. But the truth was, Maya didn't know how to figure this out anymore. She'd done everything right, worked hard, raised her kids with love and discipline, made sacrifices, followed the rules. And for what? For one act of kindness, she'd lost everything. And nobody cared. Nobody was coming to save her. Nobody was going to look at her situation and say, "This is wrong. This woman deserves better." She was on her own, just like Emma and Daniel had been on their own when they'd walked into Rosie's diner 6 months ago, hungry and scared and failed by every adult who was supposed to protect them. Maya wondered where they were now, if they were okay, if Roger was still hurting them, if their aunt was still cashing those checks while letting them starve. She wondered if her sacrifice had meant anything at all. What Maya didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that someone had been watching the night Emma and Daniel came to Rosie's diner. Gerald Winters was a 68-year-old black man who'd spent 40 years as a civil rights attorney before retiring to a quiet life in Atlanta's West End. He lived alone in a small house 3 blocks from Rosie's diner, and on nights when sleep eluded him, he took walks through the neighborhood he'd called home for 3 decades. He'd been walking past Rosie's diner that November night in 2005, when he'd seen the 2 children through the window, had seen Maya feed them, had seen the police car arrive, had seen it all. And Gerald Winters had done something that Maya would never know about until much, much later. He'd taken out his phone and called the number on the police cruiser, not 911, but the direct number for the Atlanta Police Department's Youth Services Division. "I want to report a suspected case of child abuse," he'd said to the operator. 2 children, white, approximately 7 and 10 years old, last name possibly Hartley, based on what I overheard. They were picked up from Rosie's diner on Metropolitan Parkway tonight around midnight and returned to their legal guardian. But those children showed clear signs of neglect and possible abuse. Someone needs to investigate. The operator had taken his information and assured him a case would be opened. Gerald had followed up the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. "Sir, we're looking into it," the social worker had told him. But without direct evidence or a formal complaint from the children themselves, then get direct evidence. Visit the home unannounced. Talk to the children alone. Do your job. Gerald Winters had spent 4 decades fighting for people who couldn't fight for themselves. He wasn't about to stop now. In January 2006, 2 months after Emma and Daniel had been returned to their aunt's house, a new social worker was assigned to their case. Her name was Patricia Morrison, no relation to the police officer who'd picked them up, and unlike the previous caseworker, Patricia actually cared. She'd received Gerald's complaint, along with 3 others from teachers at Emma and Daniel's school who'd noticed the bruises, the weight loss, the way the children flinched when adults moved too quickly. Patricia showed up at Linda Hartley's house on a Tuesday afternoon, unannounced, with a police officer as backup. Linda answered the door in a bathrobe, cigarette in hand, her boyfriend Roger visible in the background watching TV. The house reeked of marijuana and spoiled food. "What do you want?" Linda's words were slurred. High or drunk, Patricia couldn't tell. "Maybe both. I'm here to check on Emma and Daniel. Where are they?" "School. It's 3 p.m. "School let out an hour ago," Linda shrugged. "Then I don't know. They wander around. Not my problem." Patricia felt her jaw tighten. "Miss Hartley, you are their legal guardian. Their whereabouts are absolutely your problem. Look, lady, I'd take care of them, okay? They got a roof over their heads. They got food. What more do you want?" "I want to see their living space. I want to verify they have adequate beds, clothing, and access to meals. That's what I want." Linda's eyes narrowed. "You got a warrant?" "I don't need a warrant for a welfare check. Either let me in, or I'll get the police to remove the children from your custody right now under emergency authority." Linda stepped aside with an exaggerated sigh. "Whatever. Do your inspection. You won't find nothing." But Patricia found plenty. The children's room was an unheated storage space in the basement, accessed through a door that locked from the outside. There were 2 thin mattresses on the concrete floor, no sheets, 1 dirty blanket between them. The space smelled like mold and urine. There was no food in the house, except for a case of beer in the fridge and some moldy bread on the counter. Roger's room, the master bedroom, had a flat-screen TV, a PlayStation, expensive sneakers still in boxes. Linda's closet was full of new clothes with tags still attached. Meanwhile, Emma's jacket had holes in it. Daniel's shoes were 2 sizes too small. Patricia took photos of everything, documented everything. When Emma and Daniel returned from wherever they'd been, Patricia found them later at the public library, where they spent every afternoon because it was warm and safe. She took them aside and asked them questions. Careful questions, the kind designed to get the truth without leading them. And Emma, who'd been protecting her brother for so long, who'd been failed by so many adults, finally broke down and told the truth. Roger hit them when they made noise. Linda locked them in the basement when she wanted them out of the way. They ate at school and sometimes not at all on weekends. The foster care money went to drugs and clothes, and things that had nothing to do with Emma and Daniel. "There was one lady who helped us," Emma said quietly, tears streaming down her face. "At the diner. She gave us food. She was nice. But then we never saw her again." Patricia documented every word, took photos of every bruise, filed an emergency removal order. By that evening, Emma and Daniel were in a new placement, a real foster home with a couple named Tom and Sarah Chen, who'd been fostering children for 15 years. The kind of people who actually cared, who saw children as children rather than paychecks. Linda Hartley and Roger Brennan were both arrested, charged with child neglect, child abuse, and fraud for misusing state funds. And Patricia Morrison made a note in her file about a waitress at Rosie's diner who tried to help when no one else would. But none of this reached Maya. She didn't know that her act of kindness had set in motion a chain of events that would eventually save Emma and Daniel. She didn't know that Gerald Winters had witnessed everything and made sure someone with power actually investigated. She didn't know that Emma and Daniel were safe now, in a home where they were fed and clothed and protected. All Maya knew was that she'd lost everything for feeding 2 hungry children, and 6 months later, she was still paying the price. She was still in the shelter, still working day labor, still watching her kids suffer because she'd tried to do the right thing. And on a Wednesday in June 2006, when the payday loan company started calling about the $200 she'd borrowed and couldn't pay back, when Tamika came home crying because she'd been denied a scholarship she desperately needed, when Marcus got sent home from school again for falling asleep in class, Maya sat in the shelter bathroom and cried until she couldn't breathe. This was what doing the right thing got you. This was the reward for kindness. Nothing. Gerald Winters couldn't get Maya Johnson out of his mind. After Emma and Daniel had been removed from Linda Hartley's custody, Gerald had done something he rarely did anymore. He'd gotten involved beyond the initial complaint. He'd attended the court hearing where Linda and Roger faced charges. He'd watched as the judge sentenced Linda to probation and ordered Roger to 18 months in county jail for assault on a minor. Not enough, in Gerald's opinion, but more than nothing. He'd also watched Emma and Daniel in that courtroom, sitting with their new foster parents, looking healthier already, less haunted, and he'd heard Emma tell the judge about the night they'd run away. About the waitress at Rosie's diner who'd fed them and believed them. "I don't know her name," Emma had said softly, "but she was kind. She was the only one who helped us." Gerald had made a mental note. After the hearing, he'd gone to Rosie's diner, Richard Caldwell had been there, of course, counting receipts in his office like some modern-day Scrooge. Gerald had asked about the waitress who'd worked the night shift 6 months ago, the black woman who'd been working when 2 children came in. Maya Johnson, Richard had said with a sneer. I fired her. She was a thief. Gave away food without payment. Violated company policy. I run a business, not a charity. Gerald had kept his expression neutral, but inside his blood boiled. Do you know where she is now? No idea. Don't care. Now, if you're not ordering food, I need to get back to work. Gerald had left the diner and spent the next week making calls. He had connections throughout Atlanta from his decades of legal work. Judges, social workers, church leaders, community activists. Someone had to know where Maya Johnson was. He finally found her through a case manager at Family Promise who owed him a favor from a housing discrimination case years ago. Maya Johnson, the case manager had confirmed. She's been with us since December. Good woman, works hard, has 2 kids, trying to get back on her feet after losing her job. Can you give me her information? You know I can't do that, Gerald. Privacy laws. I want to help her, not hurt her. The case manager had been quiet for a moment. Then I'll pass along your information. If she wants to contact you, she will. That's the best I can do. But Maya had called. It was a Thursday evening in late June 2006 when Maya's phone rang with an unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Creditors had been hounding her for weeks about the payday loan, but something made her pick up. Is this Maya Johnson? An older man's voice, dignified, careful. Who's asking? My name is Gerald Winters. I'm a retired civil rights attorney here in Atlanta. I witnessed what you did for 2 children at Rosie's Diner last November. I wanted to speak with you, if you have a moment. Maya's heart stuttered. I don't understand. How did you... Those children, Emma and Daniel, they're safe now. They've been removed from their abusive home and placed with a good family. I wanted you to know that. I thought you might wonder what happened to them. Maya sat down on the shelter bed, her legs suddenly weak. They're okay? They're okay, thanks in part to you. Your act of kindness, feeding them, trying to protect them. It mattered, Mrs. Johnson. I saw what happened that night. I saw you lose your job for doing the right thing. And I've spent the last month trying to find you because someone needs to tell you that what you did wasn't for nothing. Tears streamed down Maya's face. She couldn't speak. Mrs. Johnson, are you there? I'm here, Maya whispered. I'm sorry, I didn't know. I've been wondering for months if they were okay, and I didn't know. They're more than okay. They're thriving, and they remember you. They told the court about the kind waitress who helped them when no one else would. Maya wiped her eyes, trying to compose herself. Thank you for telling me. You didn't have to track me down, but thank you. Actually, I tracked you down for another reason. Gerald's voice shifted, became more businesslike. I understand you're currently residing at Family Promise, that you lost your job at Rosie's and have been struggling to find stable employment. Maya's defenses went up immediately. I'm managing. I'm sure you are. But I'd like to help, if you'll let me. I know some people. I can make some calls. Get you some interviews at places that won't hold Richard Caldwell's lies against you. Mr. Winters, I appreciate the offer, but I don't take charity. It's not charity. It's justice. You were punished for doing something moral and right. That's not acceptable. Let me make a few calls. No strings attached. If nothing comes of it, fine. But let me try. Maya wanted to say no. She'd spent 6 months learning to depend on no one, to expect nothing, to survive through sheer stubbornness, but she was so tired. Okay, she said finally. Thank you. Gerald Winters didn't just make a few calls. He made dozens. He called Robert Chen, a friend from law school who now owned a chain of grocery stores across Atlanta. Robert owed Gerald. Gerald had gotten his son out of serious legal trouble 5 years ago. "I need you to hire someone," Gerald said. "No questions asked. Just give her a chance." "Gerald, I can't just—" "Her name is Maya Johnson. She's a hard worker. Single mother of 2. Lost her job because she fed 2 starving children who were being abused. She's been blacklisted by her former employer, who's telling lies about her character. I'm asking you, as a personal favor, to give her an interview. That's all. Just an interview." Robert had sighed. "Send me her information." 2 days later, Maya had an interview at Chen's Grocery, a regional chain with 12 locations. The interview was with Robert himself, which was unusual for a cashier position, but Robert had insisted. "Gerald speaks highly of you," Robert said, shaking Maya's hand in his office above the flagship store. He was a slim Asian man in his 60s with kind eyes and a firm handshake. "Tell me about yourself." Maya had told him everything. About Rosie's diner. About Emma and Daniel. About Richard Caldwell and the 6 months of hell that followed. Robert had listened without interrupting. When she finished, he'd nodded once. "You're hired. Full-time, $8.50 an hour to start, health benefits after 90 days. Can you start Monday?" Maya had stared at him. $8.50. That's more than... It's what the job pays, nothing more, nothing less." Robert smiled. "Gerald was right about you. Anyone who sacrifices everything to help children they don't even know is someone I want working for me." Maya had cried right there in Robert Chen's office, ugly, grateful tears she couldn't hold back. "Thank you," she'd whispered. "Thank you so much. The job at Chen's Grocery changed everything. Not overnight, not magically, but slowly, incrementally, Maya began to rebuild. The pay was better, $8.50 an hour instead of $5.15. The hours were consistent, 40 hours a week, guaranteed. The work was easier on her body standing at a register instead of hauling trash and scrubbing floors. After 2 months, Maya had saved enough for first and last month's rent on a small 2-bedroom apartment in a decent neighborhood. Not great, but safe. With a real kitchen and enough space that Tamika and Marcus could each have their own room. The day they moved out of Family Promise, Tamika hugged Maya for the first time in months. "I'm sorry, Mama," Tamika whispered. "I'm sorry for what I said. About you choosing those kids over us. You were scared, baby. We all were. But you did the right thing. Even when it cost us everything, you did the right thing." Maya held her daughter close and felt something that had been broken inside her start to heal. After 90 days at Chen's Grocery, Maya's health benefits kicked in. She was finally able to see a doctor about her back, get the medications she needed, start physical therapy. The constant pain she'd been living with began to ease. After 6 months, Robert promoted her to shift supervisor with a raise to $10.50 an hour. After a year, Maya paid off the payday loan that had been drowning her. Paid off her credit cards, started saving money, not much, but something. A safety net she'd never had before. Tamika got into the AP program and began thriving again. Her grades improved. She started talking about college again, about becoming a doctor, about a future that seemed possible. Marcus's behavior problems disappeared. He made friends, joined the basketball team, became the happy, energetic kid he'd been before everything fell apart. And Maya, for the first time in years, felt like she could breathe. She kept in touch with Gerald Winters, called him every few months to update him on her life, to thank him again for what he'd done. "You don't need to keep thanking me," Gerald would say. "You did the hard part. I just opened a door. You walked through it. You saved my family." "No, Maya. You saved your family. And you saved 2 children before that. You're the hero of this story, not me." But Maya knew better. Gerald Winters had been her guardian angel when she'd needed one most, had refused to let injustice stand, had fought for her when she'd been too exhausted to fight for herself. Some people changed your life by giving you things. Gerald Winters had changed her life by refusing to let the world forget she existed. June 2023. Atlanta, Georgia. Maya Johnson stood in the backyard of her small house in southwest Atlanta. Not the apartment she'd rented after the shelter, but an actual house she'd saved for and bought 5 years ago, and surveyed the garden she'd been tending all spring. Tomatoes, peppers, collard greens, flowers along the fence. At 60 years old, Maya had finally found peace. It had taken years of therapy to process the trauma of those months in the shelter. Years of rebuilding her relationship with Tamika, who carried guilt for what she'd said during the worst of their struggle. Years of learning to trust that stability could last, that everything wouldn't fall apart again at any moment. But she'd made it. Tamika was a doctor now, a pediatrician in Charlotte, North Carolina, married with 2 kids of her own. She called Maya every Sunday without fail, and Maya visited every few months to spoil her grandchildren. Marcus was an engineer in Seattle, engaged to a wonderful man named David, planning a wedding for next spring. He video-called Maya at least twice a week, usually to ask for her advice on something or just to hear her voice. Maya herself had worked at Chen's grocery for 10 years before Robert Chen had encouraged her to go back to school. She'd gotten her GED, then an associate degree in business management, then a bachelor's degree from Georgia State. At 55, she'd finally walked across a graduation stage and received her diploma while Tamika and Marcus cheered from the audience. She'd managed Chen's grocery flagship store for 3 years before Robert had promoted her to regional manager overseeing all 12 locations. She'd retired last year with a pension and enough savings to live comfortably. She volunteered now at Family Promise, the shelter that had housed her family during their darkest time. She served meals, mentored other single mothers, helped with job placement. She'd turned her pain into purpose. Gerald Winters had passed away 8 years ago, peacefully in his sleep at age 82. Maya had spoken at his funeral, telling the story of how he'd saved her family, how he'd refused to let one woman's kindness go unpunished, how he'd embodied everything a civil rights attorney should be. He taught me that one person can make a difference, Maya had said to the packed church. That standing up for what's right matters, even when, especially when, it costs you something. I wouldn't be here without him. My children wouldn't be who they are without him. He changed our lives by simply refusing to look away. Now, on a sunny Saturday morning in June, Maya was pulling weeds from her garden and thinking about going to the farmer's market later when she heard it. A sound that didn't belong in her quiet neighborhood, the distinctive thump-thump-thump of helicopter blades. Maya looked up, shielding her eyes from the sun. A helicopter was descending, not overhead but close, getting closer. It was landing in the empty lot next to her house, the one that had been vacant for years. Maya stood, her heart pounding for reasons she couldn't explain. This was her neighborhood. Helicopters didn't land here. This was working-class Atlanta, not Buckhead where the wealthy lived. The helicopter touched down, its blades creating a windstorm that sent Maya's tomato plants bending sideways. The engine powered down. The door opened, and 2 people stepped out. A man and a woman, both in their late 20s, both white. Both wearing expensive business clothes, the man in a tailored suit, the woman in designer slacks and a silk blouse. The woman had strawberry blonde hair pulled into a sleek ponytail, freckles across her nose, pale blue eyes that looked achingly familiar. The man had sandy brown hair, styled professionally. The same blue eyes. They walked toward Maya's fence, and Maya's knees went weak. It couldn't be. "Mrs. Johnson?" the woman called out. Her voice was different, mature, educated, confident, but something in the tone was the same. Maya Johnson? Maya couldn't speak, could barely breathe. The woman opened the gate. Maya hadn't locked it, and walked into the backyard, the man following close behind. Up close, Maya could see them clearly. Could see the 10-year-old girl and 7-year-old boy she'd fed 18 years ago, now grown into adults she wouldn't have recognized on the street. "It's Emma," the woman said, tears already streaming down her face. "Emma Hartley. This is my brother Daniel. We've been looking for you for 2 years." Maya's hand went to her mouth. "Oh my God, we never forgot you," Emma continued, her voice breaking. "That night at the diner, you were the only person who helped us, the only one. We tried to find you after we aged out of foster care, but you'd moved, changed jobs, and we didn't know your full name. We only knew Maya, but we never stopped looking." Daniel stepped forward, and Maya could see he was crying too. "You saved our lives. If you hadn't fed us that night, if you hadn't tried to protect us, we might not have survived. The police officer who picked us up that night, he filed a report because of what you said. That report got assigned to a social worker who actually cared. And 3 months later, we were removed from our aunt's house and placed with a real family. Tom and Sarah Chen," Emma said. "They adopted us when we were 12 and 9. They gave us everything: love, safety, education, a real home. But it started with you. You were the first person who saw us and cared." Maya was sobbing now, 18 years of wondering if her sacrifice had meant anything finally answered. "I lost my job. I didn't know if you were okay. I didn't know what happened to you. We know," Emma said gently. "We tracked down Richard Caldwell. He told us what he did to you. We know you lost everything for helping us." "I would do it again," Maya said fiercely. "I would do it 1,000 times again." "We know," Daniel said. "That's why we're here." Emma reached into her designer purse and pulled out an envelope. "We want to tell you what happened to us after that night, after Tom and Sarah adopted us. We want you to know that your sacrifice wasn't for nothing." They sat in Maya's small living room, Emma and Daniel on the couch, Maya in her worn armchair that she'd had for 15 years and refused to replace because it was perfectly comfortable. Emma had made tea in Maya's kitchen like she'd been doing it her whole life, and now they sat with steaming mugs, 18 years of separation bridged by a single act of kindness. "After we were removed from Aunt Linda's house," Emma began, her hands wrapped around her mug, "we were placed with Tom and Sarah Chen. They were both teachers. Tom taught high school science. Sarah taught elementary music. They'd been fostering kids for years, mostly short-term placements. But when they met us..." Emma's voice caught. Daniel reached over and squeezed her hand. "They wanted to adopt us," Daniel continued. "Not for the money or the tax breaks or any of the reasons Aunt Linda took us in. They genuinely wanted us to be their kids. We were terrified at first. We'd learned not to trust adults. But Tom and Sarah were patient. They proved, day after day, that they meant what they said. The adoption was finalized when I was 12 and Danny was 9, Emma said. Tom and Sarah Chen became our legal parents. They gave us their name, their love, everything. For the first time since our parents died, we felt safe." Maya wiped her eyes. "I'm so glad. I prayed for you both. Every night for years I prayed you'd found somewhere safe. We did. And we thrived," Emma smiled. "Tom made sure we excelled in school. He saw that I loved math and science, so he encouraged me, tutored me, pushed me. Sarah made sure we had music and art and all the things that make life beautiful, not just survivable. They sent us both to college, full rides, thanks to scholarships and their savings. I went to Georgia Tech," Daniel said with obvious pride, "studied computer science. Emma went to Stanford." "Stanford?" Maya's eyes widened. "That's in California. One of the best schools in the country?" "I studied software engineering and business," Emma said. "And while I was there, Danny and I started talking about an idea we'd had since we were kids. We wanted to build something that could help other kids like us. Kids in the system who were being failed. Daniel leaned forward, his eyes lighting up the way they probably did whenever he talked about his work. The foster care system is broken, Mrs. Johnson, you know that. You saw it. Kids get lost, abused, neglected. Caseworkers are overworked. Documentation gets lost. Good families who want to foster can't navigate the bureaucracy. Meanwhile, kids who need help fall through every crack. So we built a solution, Emma said. A software platform called Safe Haven. It's designed to streamline the foster care system. Better tracking of children. Better vetting of foster parents. Better communication between caseworkers, schools, doctors, and families. We used artificial intelligence to flag potential abuse situations before they escalate. We created a database that follows kids through the system so nothing gets lost when they move from placement to placement. We launched it 8 years ago, Daniel said. Started in California, then expanded to Oregon and Washington. Last year, we went nationwide. Safe Haven is now used in 43 states. Over 200,000 children are in the system we built. Maya stared at them. You built that? The two of you? We built the foundation, Emma said. Then we raised venture capital funding and hired engineers and social workers and people who understood the system from every angle. But yes, Danny and I started it. We're co-CEOs now. And the company is worth $2.3 billion, Daniel added quietly. We went public last year. The number was so large Maya couldn't process it. Billion. With a B. We're telling you this not to brag, Emma said quickly, seeing Maya's expression. We're telling you because none of it would exist without you. That night at the diner, you gave us food when we were starving, yes. But you also gave us something more important. You showed us that people could be good, that adults could be trusted to do the right thing, even when it cost them. We built Safe Haven on that foundation, the belief that people want to help, they just need the tools to do it effectively. You changed the trajectory of our lives, Daniel said, his voice thick with emotion. Tom and Sarah gave us stability and love. They're our parents in every way that matters. But you were the first. You were the one who proved to us that we were worth saving, that our lives mattered. Maya couldn't speak, couldn't process what she was hearing. The two starving children she'd fed 18 years ago had become billionaires who'd built a system to protect hundreds of thousands of other children. And they were sitting in her living room, crediting her with their success. We tried to find you years ago, Emma said. As soon as we had money, we hired investigators, but you'd moved, changed jobs multiple times. We only knew your first name, and that you'd worked at Rosie's Diner. Richard Caldwell wouldn't tell us anything. He actually threatened to sue us for harassment when we kept asking. How did you find me? Maya asked. Gerald Winters, Daniel said. We found a legal document from the case against Aunt Linda. A civil rights attorney named Gerald Winters had filed multiple complaints about our situation. When we tracked down his widow, she told us about you, gave us your full name. After that, finding you was easy. Maya's throat tightened. Gerald, even 8 years after his death, he was still protecting her, still making sure she got the recognition she deserved. We have something for you, Emma said, pulling out the envelope she'd been carrying. It's not enough. Nothing could be enough. But we wanted to honor what you did for us. She handed the envelope to Maya. Inside was a check. Maya looked at the amount and nearly dropped it. $10 million. That's not... I can't... Maya's hands shook so badly she had to set the check down on the coffee table. You can, Emma said firmly. You gave up your job, your stability, your security to help us. You spent months in a homeless shelter because you fed 2 hungry children. You sacrificed everything. This doesn't repay that sacrifice, but it's a start. There's more, Daniel said. He pulled out a document from his own briefcase. We've established the Maya Johnson Foundation. It's funded with $50 million initially, with annual contributions from Safe Haven's profits. The foundation provides direct financial assistance to people who lose their jobs or face retaliation for helping children in need. It also funds legal defense for whistleblowers in the child welfare system. We want to make sure that what happened to you never happens to anyone else, Emma said. We want to protect the people who protect children. And we're naming it after you because you deserve to be remembered. You deserve to be honored. Maya couldn't breathe, couldn't think. $10 million. A foundation in her name. $50 million to help others. I don't know what to say. Say you'll accept it, Emma said, tears streaming down her face again. Please, let us do this for you. You gave us everything when you had nothing. Let us give something back. Maya looked at these two remarkable people, the starving, terrified children she'd fed in a diner 18 years ago, now powerful and wealthy, and using their resources to help others. She thought about the months in the shelter, the years of struggling, the pain and fear and exhaustion, and she thought about how all of it, every bit of suffering, had been worth it to save these two lives. Okay, Maya whispered. Okay. Emma and Daniel both broke down. They moved from the couch to Maya, hugging her, crying, thanking her over and over. We love you, Emma said. We've always loved you. We never forgot the kind waitress who saved us. I never forgot you either, Maya said, holding them both. I prayed for you every single day. They stayed for hours. Emma and Daniel told Maya everything, about Tom and Sarah, who were retired now and living in Florida but who desperately wanted to meet Maya. About the early days of building Safe Haven in Daniel's apartment, while eating ramen and coding 18-hour days. About the moment they got their first state contract and realized their dream might actually work. About going public and becoming billionaires overnight, and feeling overwhelmed by the responsibility of that wealth. We're not good at being rich, Daniel admitted. We still live modestly. We still remember what it was like to be hungry. Money doesn't change that, but it gives us power, Emma added. Power to make sure other kids don't suffer like we did. That's what we're using it for. Maya told them about her life too. About Tamika and Marcus, who were both successful now and whom Maya was so proud of she could barely stand it. About Gerald Winters and Robert Chen, and all the people who'd helped her when she'd needed it most. About going back to school at 50 and graduating with her degree. About finding peace finally after years of struggle. You turned your pain into purpose, Emma said. Just like we did. You could have been bitter. You could have regretted helping us. But instead you volunteer at the shelter. You help other families. You're still choosing kindness. It's the only choice that matters, Maya said. As the sun began to set, Emma looked at her watch reluctantly. We should go. We have a meeting in San Francisco tomorrow morning. She smiled at Maya's expression. We flew here just to see you. To tell you in person what you meant to us. We'll come back soon, though, and you have our numbers now. Call us any time. For anything. We mean that, Daniel added. Your family, Mrs. Johnson. You always have been. They walked outside to where the helicopter waited. The neighbors had gathered at a respectful distance, watching this surreal scene unfold in their quiet neighborhood. Maya saw Mrs. Patterson from 3 doors down with her phone out, probably recording the whole thing. By tomorrow, everyone in southwest Atlanta would know that Maya Johnson had been visited by billionaires in a helicopter. One more thing, Emma said before boarding. Next month, we're holding a gala in San Francisco. It's a fundraiser for the Maya Johnson Foundation, the first official event. We'd be honored if you'd be our guest of honor. If you'd speak about what you did and why it mattered. I'm not good at public speaking, Maya protested. You don't have to give a speech. Just tell your story. Tell people what happened. Help us inspire others to stand up for what's right. Emma took Maya's hands. Please. You're the reason Safe Haven exists. People need to know that. Maya thought about it. Thought about standing on a stage, in front of wealthy donors and tech executives, and telling them about the worst period of her life. About being homeless. About losing everything. But she also thought about all the other Maya Johnsons out there. People who were suffering for doing the right thing, people who needed to know they weren't alone, people who deserved to be honored instead of punished. Okay, Maya said, I'll do it. Emma hugged her so hard Maya couldn't breathe. Thank you. Thank you for everything. For then, for now, for always. The helicopter lifted off, creating another windstorm that made Maya's dress whip around her legs. She watched it rise into the sky, watched it turn west toward the airport, watched until it disappeared from view. Then she looked down at the check in her hand. $10 million. More money than she'd earned in her entire life combined. Money that would secure her retirement. Money she could use to help Tamika and Marcus. Money she could donate to Family Promise and Chen's Grocery and all the places that had helped her when she'd had nothing. Money that proved, finally and definitively, that doing the right thing mattered. That kindness wasn't weakness. That sacrifice wasn't for nothing. Maya walked back into her house, sat in her worn armchair and cried, not from sadness this time, but from joy, from vindication, from the knowledge that 18 years ago, when she'd fed 2 hungry children and lost everything, she'd actually gained something far more valuable. She'd gained proof that one person could change the world. The Maya Johnson Foundation Gala was held at the Fairmont Hotel in San Francisco on a Saturday evening in July 2023. The ballroom was packed with tech executives, venture capitalists, philanthropists, and social workers. Tickets had sold out within 48 hours, with all proceeds going to the foundation's work protecting whistleblowers and supporting people who faced retaliation for helping children. Maya stood backstage in a dress that Tamika had insisted on buying her, elegant but simple, deep blue, nothing too flashy, and tried not to panic. "You're going to be great, Mama," Tamika said, adjusting Maya's necklace for the 3rd time. She'd flown in from Charlotte with her husband and kids. Specifically for this event, Marcus had flown in from Seattle with David. They were all in the audience, along with Robert Chen and his family, Patricia Morrison, the social worker who'd saved Emma and Daniel, Tom and Sarah Chen, who'd adopted them, and dozens of other people whose lives had intersected with this story. "I don't know what to say to these people," Maya admitted. "They're billionaires and CEOs. You're the reason they're here," Marcus interrupted, squeezing her shoulder. "You're the reason Safe Haven exists. They're here to honor you, Mama. Let them." The stage manager appeared. "Mrs. Johnson, you're on in 2 minutes." Maya took a deep breath. Tamika kissed her cheek. Marcus hugged her. And then Maya walked to the stage entrance, her heart pounding. Emma was at the podium speaking to the crowd. Maya could see her through the curtain, poised, confident, every inch the successful CEO. But when Emma talked about that night at Rosie's diner, her voice cracked with emotion. "The woman you're about to meet changed my life and my brother's life in ways we can never fully repay," Emma was saying. "She fed us when we were starving. She protected us when we were in danger. And she paid a terrible price for her kindness. She lost her job, her home, her stability. She spent months in a homeless shelter with her own 2 children because she chose to help 2 kids she didn't even know." The audience was silent, riveted. Maya Johnson taught us that one person's kindness can change the world, that doing the right thing matters, even when it costs you everything, that children's lives are worth fighting for. Safe Haven exists because Maya Johnson proved to us that people could be good, that adults could be trusted, that we were worth saving. Every single child we've helped through our platform, over 200,000 of them now, owes their safety in part to Maya's courage 18 years ago. Emma paused, wiping her eyes. "I'm not going to say much more because Maya's story is hers to tell, not mine. But I want you all to know that the woman you're about to meet is a hero. Not the kind you see in movies, The real kind. The kind who sacrifices everything and expects nothing in return. The kind who changes, lives simply by being kind. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Maya Johnson. The applause was thunderous. Maya walked onto the stage on shaking legs. The lights were bright. The crowd was enormous, easily 500 people, all standing, all applauding. She saw Tamika and Marcus in the front row, tears streaming down their faces, clapping so hard their hands had to hurt. She saw Tom and Sarah Chen, the couple who'd adopted Emma and Daniel, standing and clapping with expressions of profound gratitude. She saw Robert Chen, who'd given her a chance when no one else would, beaming with pride. Emma hugged her, whispered, "You've got this," in her ear, and stepped back. Maya approached the microphone. The applause gradually died down. 500 people looked at her expectantly. Maya took a breath and began. 18 years ago, I was a waitress at a diner in Atlanta, Georgia. I was 42 years old. I had 2 kids, Tamika, who's now a doctor, and Marcus, who's now an engineer. I was working double shifts, barely making ends meet, trying to give my kids a better life than I'd had. Her voice was shaking, but she pushed through. One night, 2 children came into the diner, a girl about 10 and a boy about 7. They were thin. They had bruises. They were so hungry they could barely speak, and they begged me for food. The audience was completely silent. I knew I'd get in trouble. My boss had a strict policy, no free food ever. But I looked at those children, and I thought about my own kids. I thought about what I'd want someone to do if my children were hungry and scared. So I fed them. I gave them burgers and fries and chocolate milk. I gave them my jacket because they were cold. And then the police came and took them back to the people who were hurting them. And my boss fired me. Maya's voice broke. She paused, collecting herself. I lost everything. My job, my apartment, my stability. My children and I spent 6 months in a homeless shelter. I worked day labor jobs for minimum wage. I went hungry so my kids could eat. I took out payday loans I couldn't afford to pay back. I watched my daughter give up on her dreams because we couldn't afford the fees for advanced classes. I watched my son get suspended from school because other kids bullied him for being homeless. It was the darkest time of my life. Tears streamed down her face now, but she didn't wipe them away. For months, I wondered if I'd made the right choice, if feeding those children had been worth destroying my own family's security. I wondered if they were okay, if they'd survived, if my sacrifice had meant anything at all. And I didn't know. I had no way to know. I just had to have faith that doing the right thing mattered, even when I couldn't see the results. Maya looked at Emma and Daniel, who were standing at the side of the stage, both crying openly. 18 years later, those children found me. They came to my house in a helicopter and told me what happened to them after that night. They told me they'd been rescued, adopted by wonderful parents, sent to college, and had built a company that protects hundreds of thousands of other children. They told me that my sacrifice hadn't been for nothing, that I'd changed their lives. Her voice strengthened. I'm not telling you this story because I want sympathy or praise. I'm telling you this because I want you to understand something important. One person can make a difference. One act of kindness can change the world. You don't need money or power or connections. You just need to be willing to do the right thing when you see someone who needs help. Maya looked out at the audience. All these wealthy, powerful people who could do so much good if they chose to. Every single day, there are children like Emma and Daniel who need help. There are people who see injustice and want to speak up but are afraid of the consequences. There are families struggling to survive, just one emergency away from homelessness. And there are people who have the power to help but don't, because they think one person can't make a difference. Her voice rang out strong and clear now. I'm here to tell you that one person can make all the difference. I was a broke waitress with nothing special about me, except that I chose to help when I saw children in need. And that choice, that single choice, set in motion events that created a company worth billions and a system that protects hundreds of thousands of children. Not because I'm extraordinary, but because I chose kindness when it would have been easier to look away. Maya gripped the podium. The Maya Johnson Foundation exists to protect people who make that choice, to make sure that doing the right thing doesn't mean losing everything, to ensure that kindness isn't punished but rewarded. And I'm honored to be here tonight, honored that my story can inspire others, honored that the worst period of my life can be turned into something that helps people. She looked directly at Emma and Daniel. Thank you for finding me. Thank you for remembering. Thank you for turning your pain into purpose. And thank you for proving to me that my sacrifice mattered, that those 6 months of hell were worth it to save 2 beautiful lives. Maya's voice broke completely. If I had to do it all over again, if I could go back to that night in November 2005 and choose differently, I wouldn't change a thing, because those 2 children were worth it. Every child is worth it. And if my story inspires even one person to help a child in need, if it gives even one person the courage to stand up against injustice, then everything I went through had meaning. The audience erupted in applause. But this time it wasn't polite fundraiser applause. It was raw, emotional, people standing and clapping and crying. Maya saw grown men wiping their eyes. She saw CEOs who probably hadn't cried in decades openly weeping. Emma and Daniel rushed onto the stage and embraced her. Tom and Sarah Chen joined them. Then Tamika and Marcus came up from the audience. And suddenly Maya was surrounded by all these people whose lives had been touched by one act of kindness 18 years ago. The standing ovation lasted 5 full minutes. After the gala, after the speeches and the fundraising and the photographs, Maya stood on the balcony of the Fairmont Hotel looking out at San Francisco. Tamika and Marcus were inside at the reception, mingling with tech billionaires and telling anyone who would listen how proud they were of their mother. Emma found her there. "Thank you for speaking," Emma said, joining her at the railing. "Your story, people needed to hear it. I've already had a dozen people come up to me saying they want to get involved, want to donate, want to do something to help." "Good," Maya said. "That's what matters." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, looking at the city lights. "Can I ask you something?" Emma said finally. "During those months in the shelter, when everything was falling apart, did you hate us? Did you regret helping us?" Maya turned to look at her, this brilliant, successful woman who still carried the scars of a traumatized childhood. "Never," Maya said firmly. "Not for 1 second. I was angry at Richard Caldwell. I was angry at the system. I was angry at a world that punishes kindness. But I never regretted helping you. You and Daniel were innocent children who needed food. That's all that mattered. We cost you so much. You gave me so much more." Maya took Emma's hand. "You gave me proof that kindness matters, that doing the right thing, even when it's hard, is always the right choice. You gave me a story worth telling. And you gave me the privilege of knowing I saved 2 lives. That's worth more than any amount of money or comfort or security." Emma wiped her eyes. "Tom and Sarah say the same thing, that we gave them purpose, that we made their lives meaningful. Because it's true. Helping others, truly helping them, sacrificing for them, that's what gives life meaning. Not money or success or comfort. Connection, love, service. You sound like Sarah. She's always saying stuff like that." Maya smiled. "She sounds like a wise woman. She is." "You'd like her. She's a lot like you, actually." Emma paused. "She wants to meet you. If you're willing. Both she and Tom have been talking about you non-stop, since they found out we'd located you. I'd love to meet them. Anyone who loved you and Daniel the way you deserve to be loved is someone I want to know." They were quiet again, and then Emma said softly, "Do you believe in fate, that some things are meant to happen?" Maya thought about it, about the series of events that had brought them to this moment. About Gerald Winters being awake and walking past the diner that exact night. About Patricia Morrison being assigned their case. About Tom and Sarah Chen wanting to adopt them. About Emma and Daniel building Safe Haven and spending years searching for the waitress who'd helped them. "I believe in choice," Maya said finally. "I believe that every moment we choose kindness over cruelty, hope over despair, love over fear, those choices ripple outward in ways we can't predict. I chose to help you." Gerald Winters chose to follow up on what he saw. Patricia Morrison chose to actually investigate. Tom and Sarah chose to adopt you. You and Daniel chose to use your success to help others. All of those choices led to this moment. She squeezed Emma's hand. "So maybe it's not fate. Maybe it's just a lot of people choosing good when they could have chosen otherwise. And maybe that's more powerful than fate, anyway." Emma smiled through her tears. "I like that we create our own meaning through our choices. We do. And you've made beautiful choices, Emma. Both you and Daniel. I'm so proud of you. We're proud of you, too. You're our hero, Maya. You always have been." Inside, someone called for Emma. A photographer wanted a group photo. Emma hugged Maya once more, then headed back to the reception. Maya stayed on the balcony a moment longer, looking at the city, thinking about her life, about the path that had led from a diner in Atlanta to a ballroom in San Francisco, about the scared, desperate woman she'd been 18 years ago, and the peaceful, secure woman she was now. She thought about Richard Caldwell, who'd fired her for feeding children. She wondered if he'd heard about tonight, about Safe Haven, about the billions of dollars and the foundation named after her. She wondered if he regretted his cruelty. Probably not. Men like Richard Caldwell rarely did, but it didn't matter anymore. His cruelty had lost. Her kindness had won. Not immediately, not without cost. But ultimately, definitively, her kindness had won, and that was all that mattered. Maya returned to the reception where her children waited, where Emma and Daniel and Tom and Sarah and Robert Chen and Patricia Morrison and dozens of others whose lives had been touched by one act of kindness gathered to celebrate the ripple effects of choosing good. She'd fed 2 hungry children 18 years ago and lost everything, and tonight she'd gained the whole world. The end. If this story moved you, consider sharing it with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes the people who sacrifice the most get remembered the least, but not today. Today we remember Maya Johnson. We remember Emma and Daniel Hartley. We remember everyone who chooses kindness even when it costs them everything, because those are the people who change the world. Drop a comment below and tell us about a time someone's kindness changed your life. We read every single one. Until next time, remember that one person, one choice, one moment of compassion can create ripples that reach farther than you'll ever know.